Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we're not down in the layout room today, we're actually up in my office, and that's because I've been prepping a special video for you guys. You see, I am working on a clinic to give at an upcoming NMRA division meet, and I figured what better way to rehearse that clinic than to just make it into a video for all of you as well. So, if you're interested in a quick little clinic on young people in model railroading, feel free to pop some popcorn, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's video. All right, so here we go. There's a common myth out there that sort of grinds my gears a little bit, and that's that young people don't want to model anymore. And I can honestly say that I hope by the end of this presentation you'll be convinced that that's just inherently false. So a quick about me. I used to be young. I'm 30 now. That's still a young age for a lot of people, but for those younger than me, it's a jumping off point into the land of middle age. So I like to acknowledge that, for some younger than me, I'm not young anymore, and that's okay. I've been modeling seriously for about 12 years. That's a little bit different than a lot of people. I got into model railroading while I was in college, specifically. Always loved trains, always had model trains growing up. I had Thomas the train, Tomy, the blue track stuff, made all sorts of carpet kingdoms and things of the like, but never really got serious into real model railroading until I got into college. It was in college that I decided that I had had enough of scrolling through my phone and staring at screens all day in classes and wanted something tactile to do, something that I could feel some accomplishment when I completed. It was during that time that I discovered my love of weathering, of scenery, of custom decaling and weathering locomotives, all these things that fostered a really great relationship between myself and the hobby of model railroading. But why is the subject of young people in model railroading so important to me? Well, one of my big mantras in life and as a content creator on YouTube is to inspire people to model. I've talked about it at length in different mediums. But I also love the NMRA, and unfortunately, the NMRA is at a bit of a crossroads right now. A large portion of the NMRA's body is getting up there in age, and if we don't start to recruit new, younger members, there's a chance that the NMRA that we all love and know today will cease to exist, and that's a hard realization to come to, but it's a realization that we have to come to. It's something that our leadership team at the national level has acknowledged themselves, and through the Vision 2035 initiative is really pushing hard to make sure that the NMRA becomes a place for younger model railroaders, which I'm all for. Ultimately, I do want to see the next generation of modelers succeed, and one of the big things that always grinds my gears is that when I was a young model railroader, for some reason, I kept getting told to my face that young people don't model, despite having multiple projects going on, probably too many at one time. So let's get to know a couple of other younger model railroaders. On the left, we have Dennis. He's 23, turning 24 very soon. He's been modeling for about 12 years, and his favorite activities are weathering and custom painting. A lot of Northeast Region NMRA division members will know Dennis. He just won an incredible award at the Northeast Region Convention for inspiring people to model. Dennis is also very active in his Hudson Valley division of the NMRA and is actually working towards his MMR slowly but surely, and his goal is to complete as much of the MMR as he can in N scale, which is quite the monumental task. In the middle here, we have Garrett. Garrett has been modeling for 13 years. He's 20 years old. His favorite activities are electronics and DCC. I met Garrett through the Rochester Institute of Technology's Model Railroad Club. I invited them over to my layout and had an operating session with them and tried to get a better understanding of how college model railroaders perceived the NMRA. This is a project that's ongoing. I'm hoping to expand it beyond just RIT and look at the college model railroad clubs across the nation. So if you're watching this video and you have a close relationship with any of the college model railroad clubs in your area, I would love to hear from you. Feel free to drop a comment down below and we'll get connected. And then on the right-hand side, we have my friend Brandon. Brandon is 26. He's been modeling since he was the ripe old age of 4. His favorite modeling activity is scenery, and Brandon is a big proponent of modular model railroading. Brandon has a large collection of Fremo modules. He facilitates an annual Fremo meet in the town of Sydney, New York, that everybody affectionately knows as the Sydney Shakedown Cruise. It's a great opportunity for new module builders to come and test out a module where there's not a large public crowd waiting to criticize them. So we really appreciate Brandon putting on that event and all of the effort that he puts into doing so. So, young people don't want to model, or so we've been told, but do we understand what it is that's different now with model railroaders compared to what it might have been 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years ago? Well, these are the 3 big things that I can think of: the cost of living, evolution of the hobby itself, including model availability, and the ways in which young people model have also changed as well. So let's get the inconvenient and uncomfortable stuff out of the way here. It's important to acknowledge that younger model railroaders and young people in general are disproportionately facing financial challenges that other generations did not have to face. Now, I'm not saying that other generations didn't have their own challenges. They certainly did. But it is important that we acknowledge the challenges that this generation is facing. And that's that, unfortunately, 2 major areas of cost of living and just cost of living in general are really affecting the way young people model. You see, unfortunately, over the last 50 years, we've started to experience a housing market that's outpacing wage growth. The housing market itself has outpaced wage growth by over 100%. You can see on the graph here on the bottom left, provided by CNBC with reliable sources. Of course, I'm trying to use reliable sources for all of my data. We can also see that on the top right-hand side that the cost of a college degree, if somebody decides to go to college, has increased over 169%, which is absolutely crazy. And all of this amounts to a situation where young people are unfortunately not able to buy a home. The new average for first-time home buyers in the United States has reached the age of 40 years old. And it's important to acknowledge that the American modeler's dream is not what it used to be anymore. So how do these changes in the cost of living end up influencing young model railroaders? Well, it means that unfortunately there's more time spent living at home with mom and dad, more time spent living in apartments. And that means that any sort of hopes they have of having a large basement layout or anything that's really a permanent layout is largely unobtainable for the most part. Young modelers are forced to live on less disposable income, which also means that they have less money, not just for models, but also the tools necessary to be a modeler. That means all of the specialized little tools that you need for scratch building, the space that you need for scratch building, the power tools that you need for building layouts. All of those things can be a challenge for a young modeler to obtain. All this means that, like I said before, young modelers are less likely to have a desire to build a large layout, and they're more likely to want to take on smaller projects, a modular model railroad, a portable layout, maybe even no layout at all, and they belong to a club, and they're focusing a lot of their effort into models themselves, locomotives, custom lighting installs, custom sound installs, high-level prototype graffiti and weathering. These are all ways that young people are modeling, even if it's not acknowledged by other generations. So let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these subjects. We'll start with model availability and the evolution of the hobby. And one of the things that I hear as a member of the NMRA talking with older members and younger members is this myth surrounding super detailing kits, specifically blue box kits. I hear a lot of people say, well, it's a shame that younger modelers won't pull out a blue box kit anymore and super detail it. Well, first of all, blue box kits actually stopped production in 2009. So younger modelers who are modeling modern prototypes, unfortunately, just straight up don't have kits available for them of models that they're interested in modeling. There are a few of them out there, but a lot of the blue box stuff is transition era. It's, maybe 70s, 80s, that sort of thing. And that means that some of them just aren't right for younger, modern modeler. It's also important to acknowledge that the cost breakdown just really isn't there for super detailing low-end models. I've talked about it in the past on my channel. I went through trying to super detail an Athearn yellow box locomotive. This was a locomotive from a early 2000s release from Athearn. It's a DCC-friendly locomotive, which means it didn't have a DCC-ready board. It came stripped of all of its separately applied detail. All of it had to go on. And it was missing a lot of the road number specific detail, which meant I had to put it on myself. And so you can see the list of stuff that I purchased in order to do this project, and ultimately it ended up netting out to an MSRP that was very, very comparable to a brand new out-of-the-box Athearn Genesis locomotive with sound. Same goes for rolling stock itself. This is actually a project that I'm going to be taking on here soon. I've got this gorgeous Accurail covered hopper in my club's freelance scheme that I'm looking to super detail, but those Plano etched metal roof walks alone are $11.25 MSRP. And then I've also got KDs that I've got to put in it and Intermountain metal wheel sets. And when everything's said and done, we're looking at a cost of almost $50 just to super detail a piece of rolling stock. Whereas if you look at Athearn Genesis, a gorgeous model with spinning roller bearing caps, etched metal walkways, end of car detail that's much nicer than the molded Accurail stuff, and you can get that for a retail price of $40. So it's important to acknowledge that, sure, young modelers could be super detailing blue box kits, but ultimately when it comes down to it, the cost is just relatively prohibitive to doing so. It's not that young modelers don't want to be doing these things, it's that it makes financial sense to buy the ready-made version. But that doesn't mean that young people aren't modeling. They're still super detailing, they're still kit bashing, and they're still scratch building. But the way in which they're doing those things has certainly evolved. Here's a couple of quick examples from our stars of the show. You can see here on the left, Dennis has actually scratch built a version of the Hopewell Junction Depot in his hometown, or in his hometown area of Poughkeepsie, New York. This is an absolutely gorgeous model, and people don't even realize it immediately, but this is N scale. So not only is Dennis scratch building, but he's doing it at a smaller scale than even I thought was imaginable, and getting incredible results. Now, Brandon, as I mentioned before, is a huge proponent of module model railroading. He's got a bunch of Fremo modules. Up here is his brand new set that is still a work in progress. He calls it Quarry. Garrett is quite the modeler himself. This is just scratching the surface of what he's built. He's got a total of 4 different Finger Lakes Railway shoving platforms, all of which are equipped with full prototype lighting functions, sound, and a bunch of detail to make them more accurate to the prototype. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think that prototype's a pretty great one, don't you? I might be a little biased, but I don't know. So, with an idea of some of the projects that young people are taking on, let's try to understand a little bit more about how young people are modeling. Before we get into the specifics of how young people are modeling, though, let's just take a moment to recognize that young people are coming together to model together. You see, Garrett, Dennis, and Brandon, and myself have all started creating freelance short lines that interact with one another. We're pushing each other to become better modelers, to do things like custom painting and lighting installs and super detailing locomotives. And it's been a great collaborative effort to be a part of with these young model railroaders, even though I'm now over the hill myself. So we've talked about it a bunch already, but one of the big ways that young people are modeling is not necessarily through a basement empire anymore. Unfortunately, like I said, the average age of the first-time home buyer in the United States is 4 years old. And if a model railroader wants to model, unfortunately, it's likely not going to be in a basement for the first few years of their life on their own. So how is it that young people build layouts then? Well, they do it in a couple of different ways. The first is through portable layouts like Dennis is designed. He's got a really great switching layout that just sits on a couple of sawhorses in his bedroom and can be stood up vertically, and the sawhorse is folded up and put out of the way, and it's out of his way, and he's got all the space he needs. Dennis also takes this layout to shows to demonstrate operations to a larger audience, which is really cool. He just had it at the Poughkeepsie show the other weekend and gave a couple of demonstrations, which was pretty neat. Now, the other way that young modelers are participating in the active building layouts is through modular standards. There's 3 big ones and another one that I'll talk about later in the presentation. The first of which is Fremo. This is something that you've seen on my channel as I'm trying to inspire people to model. My modules are called the Tonawanda Creek. It's based off of Genesee Valley Transportation in Batavia, New York. But I'm not the only one that's doing Fremo, of course. Brandon, like I said, has a bunch of Fremo modules. This is one of his more complete ones. This is Cold Storage, which is just a simple 2-foot by 4-foot module with an industry. The beauty of Fremo is that you don't need to have a full layout in order to participate. Your little module gets plugged into a much larger layout that offers a ton of free running and operations potential. Second way in which I am also personally involved is T-Track. T-Track is an N-scale modular standard meant to go on tabletops, and it's something that Dennis is also involved with himself. Dennis and I are also part of a group called the Upload Express Modelers, which is detailing the build process for T-Track modules, which is pretty darn cool. Dennis is building a very large T-Track set of modules based on Hopewell Junction and the industries in that area. And that scratch-built model that I showed you earlier is going to go right on these modules for everybody at train shows and T-Track meets to see. And the other method, which unfortunately I don't have any examples of here, but maybe someday I'll dabble into it myself, is Fremo N. And Fremo N is much the same as Fremo, just in N scale. I'll tell you, I met a few Fremo N-scalers last year at the Springfield show, and those guys know what they're doing. There are some spectacular modules. I think in my Springfield recap video, I showed a module that had functioning semaphores on it. Those guys, I mean, they're really, really producing some fantastic stuff. So, like I said before, young modelers, they're still super detailing, they're still kit bashing, they're still scratch building, but the ways in which they're doing so have changed a little bit, and that's thanks to the technology that's available on the market. You see, 3D printers and laser cutters have become relatively affordable. The upfront cost is a little up there, but once you've got it, it opens up a huge world of possibilities as far as what's able to be modeled. Dennis's Hopewell Junction depot has 3D printed roof supports that actually Lakeshore's member Rick Rubino printed for him. Dennis did the drawings himself, sent them over to Rick, and Rick printed them for him and sent them off to Poughkeepsie so that Dennis could finish his model right before the Northeast Region Convention, which is pretty cool. Garrett himself is also utilizing a lot of 3D printing. His Finger Lakes cabooses utilize a prototype front pilot that he tooled up himself, a generator, which is insanely well detailed that he drew up himself, and some 3D printed propane tanks as well. So ultimately, when it comes to super detailing and scratch building, some of the methods that older generations might have used might still be valuable, but younger modelers are working smarter and not necessarily harder. So like I said, younger modelers, they're still super detailing. It's just a little bit different. They're using those 3D printed details. Super detailing has kind of expanded beyond just the outside of a locomotive too. Super detailing now really means that you're going to have prototype sound in your locomotive. You're going to have high quality sound through companies like Scale Sound System Speakers, who offer high fidelity speakers as upgrades for stock locomotives. There's also a lot of custom sound files that go into it. We'll talk about later a friend of mine who's doing prototype horns based on recordings from YouTube of specific locomotives. He's getting the exact horn onto a decoder so that it is exactly as it sounds in real life, which is pretty darn cool. And not only are they doing that, but they're doing prototype lighting functions as well. SMD LEDs have now gotten so good and so reliable that a lot of lighting functions that would have been a pain to do with incandescents or would have been at risk of blowing out pretty quickly are now much more reliable. Strobe lights, ditch lights, class lights, tricolor changing class lights are all things that are possible now, and young modelers and experienced modelers too are putting those into practice. Here's just a quick video of Garrett's cabooses on my layout, showing the fantastic sound and the lighting functions that he put together. And as you can see, it's all four of them. He did a spectacular job on all four. But these three modelers are not the only ones. There's thousands of young modelers learning their way through the process of being model railroaders, true model railroaders, not just watching trains run in circles all across the country. We've got Mitchell, who's a friend of mine from Pennsylvania. He's currently working on a Craftsman kit in N scale, which is phenomenal. My good friend Josh, who relocated from Fredonia, New York, down to Raleigh, North Carolina, has been busy at work since leaving us here in cold New York, building a massive 32-foot yard for the sipping and switching standard, which is a modular standard that's pretty popular down in North Carolina and expanding outward. It's a pretty fantastic standard, and I hope it gets bigger. This yard that he's building is not just a yard. I mean, he's got it fully scenic. He's got functioning CTC on the module. All of this is really high-level modeling work. And to top it all off, Josh is not only just a modular modeler, but he's also a super detailer to the max. This is an example of some of his work. This is an Alaska Railroad unit that he super detailed up with functional lighting packages, including the strobe and that top light, some very funky horns that Alaska put on their locomotives, all of it prototype correct, which is absolutely fantastic. And, oh, by the way, I haven't met him, but did you know that there was a 23-year-old on the cover of Railroad Model Craftsman? Yeah, he was just on the Around the Layout podcast. His name is Kinzer Hunt, and he models the First Coast, which is a railroad in Florida. His layout is filled with scratch-built structures, custom weathered, custom painted, and prototype correct graffiti. Some absolutely fantastic stuff from somebody 23 years old. I find it just a little bit funny that maybe some of the people out there continuing the stereotype that younger people don't model couldn't even sniff the cover of such a prestigious magazine, whereas Kinzer, a 23-year-old, has made the cover and has been published in it twice. So let's talk about a little bit of the sentiment of the tenured modeler. You know, I am close friends with a lot of modelers that are older than me, and I think I've done a pretty good job of listening to what it is that are their concerns and hopefully providing ways to connect younger modelers and more tenured modelers. It seems like a lot of the sentiment that I hear from tenured modelers is that they have a generation filled with valuable experience, and they're disappointed that younger modelers just don't want to listen to any of it. And I think while this is definitely unfortunate, it's important to acknowledge that the way that younger modelers have learned about model railroading has changed. The internet has become a wealth of information, and it's become a place where younger modelers can connect with other people in a way that only used to be possible through the local model railroad club and the local hobby shop. It's a lot easier now for young modelers to establish trust and respect for a modeler they see online, where they can watch and rewatch their videos constantly and ask questions there and come up with great answers. But make no mistake, this doesn't mean that the more tenured modelers' advice is worthless. It just means that we need to take a different approach when trying to connect with younger modelers. So how is it that we can effectively connect with younger modelers? Well, first and foremost, there's one very, very large no-no, and that is never give unsolicited feedback to a young modeler that you've just met. This is absolutely critical. Giving unsolicited feedback, especially negative feedback, can be the quickest way to turn a new modeler or a young modeler off the hobby altogether. Second is make an effort to get to know young modelers. Third, understand and acknowledge the influences at play in their lives. We've talked about a little bit of that, but we'll go into more detail. And the fourth is, rather than giving empty feedback, recognize and understand opportunities that you have to provide the resources needed for a young modeler to succeed. Feedback and establishing trust. There is nothing that's going to turn a young modeler away from the hobby faster than somebody that they don't know giving them negative feedback. That is why it's so important that before giving any feedback, an experienced modeler takes the time to connect with a new or young modeler. There's a chance that young modelers are very, very proud of the things that they're doing, even if they look a little rough to you. Here's just an example that Dennis graciously let me include in this presentation. This is a little bit of his early work on the left-hand side. You can see he was hand painting with a brush a lot of his stuff, and this is what it's turned into recently. That's actually the same exact locomotive on the left and on the right. Dennis stripped it down to bare plastic and repainted it. But had Dennis gotten very negative feedback right from the start, there's a chance that he never would have tried. He would have either gotten out of the hobby entirely or resorted back to just doing, straight out of the box models and not trying to do any sort of custom painting at all. Instead, though, Dennis established relationships with people that he trusted and formed a group of friends that is all pushing each other to become better modelers. And this is the result. It's a hyper-detailed model with amazing separately applied detail. He added the C&W style gong nose. He added separately applied details. He's got some etched metal fan grills on there. And then he custom painted it and went through the effort of doing the decals himself and having them printed. He designed these decals himself. He not only designed the ones that you can see, but there's some on there that are so small you can't see. He's got builder plates. He's got specific locomotive information, a specific build date. There's incredible amounts of detail on this little N-scale SD40-2. And that's because Dennis is a part of a group of people who are encouraging each other to become better modelers. He didn't have that negative feedback from this initial attempt, and he's been able to progress as a modeler. So another way that tenured modelers tend to turn off younger modelers is by trying to make backgrounds a competition. We've talked a little bit about the struggles of the young modeler today, the financial constraints, and that's not to say that their situation is any worse or better off than older modelers. It's important to acknowledge that older modelers had a whole separate struggle to go through. There's a whole list of things that happened in the past that younger modelers don't have to worry about today, that, older generations definitely had their own struggles. But a younger modeler, they're not looking for you to one-up their story with a tale of how you had to walk uphill both ways to school and in the snow. No, they're looking for your empathy and understanding about the troubles that they face today. The financial struggles of not being able to own a home until they're 40. The financial struggles of having a mountain of student loan debt that prevents them from doing the things that they love. Those sorts of things. And it's when we have a good understanding of the struggles of the young model railroader and a mutual level of respect that we can then start to understand what it is that we can do to help them. We can offer them resources and opportunities rather than just empty feedback. Like I've continued to stress, young modelers sometimes do lack the financial means to have this vast collection of specialized tools that it takes to do scratch building and super detailing and kit bashing. So when a more tenured modeler recognizes this, it's important that they step up and not just give feedback about how a project came together, but also offer them the opportunity to utilize the tools that they may have at their disposal. And hopefully not just utilize the tools, but also offer guidance. But it's all based on first establishing a positive relationship where there's mutual trust and respect involved. So what are we doing in the Lakeshores division to connect with the younger modelers? Well, like I said, I've started to connect personally and through the Lakeshores division with the RIT Model Railroad Club. We invited them to participate last month in our Op Around the Clock, which is our ops weekend. And we had, I think, 5 or 6 individuals from the club take part, operated multiple layouts, got to know local model railroaders within our division and from across the Northeast, which is valuable for them to be starting to make those connections while they're still in college. We also got together and did a joint T-Track build with the students of RIT. We had a blast doing it. We had, I think, 8 members of the NMRA and 10 to 12 members of RIT come together. We all built T-Track modules, and we're looking forward to displaying them together at RIT's upcoming Model Railroad Show, Tiger Tracks, which is in December. If you're interested in traveling in for that, I believe it's December 13th and 14th. We're also hosting the Rochester RPM, which is going to be February 21st and 22nd, and gives an opportunity not just for young modelers, but modelers in general to come together, show the things that they've been working on, and enjoy the camaraderie that is model railroading. We're really looking forward to that event. We've got some really special clinics to go through. We'll have a Fremo layout up and running. We'll have a T-Track layout up and running, and we should have an absolute blast of a time. And finally, future events that are to be determined. We want to do things like the T-Track build again. We want to do Fremo build sessions. We are grateful here in the Lakeshores division to have a shop that's offered their facilities for us to come in and take a day and build Fremo modules with an experienced Fremo mod builder. And we're really looking forward to that when we can find time to put it on the schedule. So as we start to wrap things up here, I think it's important that we understand that there's people in every generation that just want to watch trains run in circles and that don't want to model. But one of the most damaging things that you can say to a young modeler is that they don't want to model. I hope that through this presentation, we've started to get a few of the more tenured modelers within our community to a point of understanding that young people do want to model. We just need to do a better job of connecting with them and providing them with the resources that they want, not necessarily the ones that we think and assume that they need. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video and taking part in this presentation. If you got any feedback from me about how this presentation could be evolved to be better, please feel free to put a comment down below. I am happy to take in your feedback. I hope that some of the modelers that maybe thought young people don't want to model have had their minds changed by this presentation. And I certainly appreciate them at least taking the time to watch this video, even if they didn't. Take care, everybody. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one.